Your life is not a series of random meetings. It is a sacred dialogue between you and your own soul, and every person who has ever left a mark was simply a message in that ongoing conversation. The question is, are you finally ready to listen? Think about this for a moment. You're going about your day, scrolling, working, half distracted by life, and suddenly you think of them. No reason, no trigger. They just appear in your mind like a whisper. And then your phone lights up. A message, their name. Or you hear their name in conversations, on the radio, in a random video. You keep bumping into their presence, even when you're not trying to look. After a while, it's hard to call it random anymore. Jung used the word synchronicity to describe this, a meaningful coincidence of two or more events, where something other than chance seems to be at play. It's not that one event causes the other, it's that the pattern feels too precise, too symbolic, too personally significant to ignore. But here is what most people misunderstand. Synchronicity is not just the universe sending you someone, it's the outer world responding to your inner world. When you are deeply out of alignment, ignoring your emotions, betraying your truth, running from your pain, the people who show up in your life often reflect that chaos. Confusing, inconsistent, unavailable. Not because you deserve it, but because your unconscious is still full of unresolved patterns. But when you start to become more conscious, when you begin your healing, when you turn inward instead of outward, when you slowly, imperfectly begin to align with who you truly are, your inner frequency changes and life responds. That response might come through opportunities, moments, losses. And very often it comes through a person, someone whose timing feels too precise, someone whose presence feels strangely familiar, someone who activates something in you that had been sleeping for years. They are not an accident, and they are not a magic prize you finally earned. They are a symbol. Your psyche, your soul, if you prefer that language, uses them the way dreams use images to show you something about yourself. Maybe they embody the freedom you've secretly been craving. Maybe their calmness mirrors the peace you've been longing for. Maybe their distance wakes up your old fear of abandonment. They are not just a person, they are an amplifier for what already lives inside you. This is where synchronicity becomes more than a romantic story. It becomes spiritual psychology, because not every sign is, "This is your forever." Sometimes the sign is, "This person carries the exact energy you need in order to see what's missing, what's unhealed, or what's been denied inside of you." You think you're obsessing over them, but what if what you're really obsessed with is the part of you that starts to wake up when they're around? This is why it feels so intense, so fast, so out of proportion with how long you've known them. It's not about time, it's about depth. When your inner world reaches a certain level of readiness, when your unconscious has built up enough pressure, it doesn't tap gently, it sends a shock. A moment, a look, a meeting that rearranges something in your chest. You could call it destiny, you could call it a test. Jung might call it the unconscious finally breaking through and saying, "Look, I need you to see this now." So when synchronicities start to cluster around a person, or their name, their presence, the timing, yes, the meeting might feel bigger than you. Yes, the timing may feel unreal. Yes, the pull might scare you. But under all of that, something essential is happening. Your inner world is calling, and this person is the echo. You are not just being given a destiny. You are being invited into your own evolution. And that is where our journey really begins. Sometimes you don't fall in love with a person. You fall in love with the version of you that wakes up around them. There's a reason the connection felt bigger than logic. Why it pulled you in fast, deep, and without permission. It wasn't because they were flawless. It wasn't because they were the one. It was because they carried something your unconscious had been waiting to meet. Carl Jung called this phenomenon projection, the invisible act of placing our unhealed wounds, forgotten desires, and unlived potential onto another human being, and then believing that what we see in them is real. But projection isn't a flaw. It's a map that reveals not who they are, but who you are beneath the surface. Let's slow this down. When you meet someone who feels different, you don't just see their face or hear their words. You see your story reflected back at you, your longings, your fears, your forgotten parts, all illuminated through the presence of one person who feels strangely significant. It's not magic, it's psychology. But it feels magical because it speaks the language of the soul. When you encounter someone who ignites something in you, desire, admiration, fear, obsession, you're not responding only to them. You're responding to the meaning your psyche has placed upon them. You're not seeing a stranger, you're seeing a symbol of the freedom you lost, a symbol of the love you never received, a symbol of the courage you abandoned, a symbol of the wounds you never healed. And this is where things become beautifully, painfully human. You meet someone who seems free, unapologetic, alive, untamed, and suddenly you feel drawn to them like gravity. But pause here. Are you drawn to their freedom, or to the freedom inside you that has been asleep for years? You admire their boldness because your own boldness has been suffocated by responsibilities, expectations, or fear. You're not just seeing them. You're seeing the version of yourself you're longing to return to. They arrive, and instantly your fear wakes up. What if they leave? Why do I feel so attached already? Why do they matter this much? Are you afraid of them leaving? Or is your old wound being triggered, the one that whispers, "People I love don't stay. People I trust disappear. I'm not safe with closeness." You're not scared of their absence. You're scared of reliving a story that broke you once. They become the face of a wound that wasn't healed, a wound they did not create. Ever felt like someone understood you too deeply, too fast? As if they just got you? That feeling is not necessarily because they are your soulmate. It might be because they mirror a part of your childhood, a parent you wanted love from, a person who made you feel alive once, or even a piece of your own shadow that's finally surfacing. When two psyches meet, they exchange more than words. They exchange symbols. They exchange history. They exchange unconscious material that neither person fully understands. And this is where many heartaches begin. We mistake psychological depth for destiny. We mistake emotional intensity for compatibility. We mistake projection for love. But projection isn't the enemy, it's the invitation. Because the truth is, they are not your savior, they are your symbol. A symbol carrying everything you've ignored, lost, suppressed, or abandoned within yourself. Every intense connection carries a message. Every attraction is a mirror. Every longing is a doorway to something buried inside you. And if you slow down long enough, you'll realize the truth. You are not obsessed with them. You are obsessed with the part of you that they awaken. This is why these connections feel sacred. This is why they feel spiritual. This is why they feel cosmic, because they are not occurring on the surface. They're happening in the deep architecture of your psyche, where the shadow sleeps, where the wounds live, and where your unlived potential waits for resurrection. So instead of running toward them or running away from them, run inward. Listen to what the projection reveals. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Let this be your turning point. Let projection become your teacher, not your trap. If they were sent to heal you, then why does it hurt this deeply? Why does someone who feels meant for you also activate the rawest parts of you? Why does your confidence crumble, your independence vanish, your calmness dissolve into anxiety you didn't even know that was still inside you? Here's the truth most people don't understand. A soul connection doesn't just awaken love, it awakens the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It's not darkness in the dramatic, mystical sense. It's the part of you you've avoided, the jealousy you deny, the neediness you shame, the fear you suppress, the insecurities you hide so well that even you stop noticing them. The shadow is everything you were taught to reject in yourself. The parts you were told were too much, too sensitive, too needy, too emotional, too attached. So you buried them, nicely, quietly, skillfully. You built identities on top of them. I'm chill. I don't care. I'm independent. I don't get attached. I'm strong. And maybe you believed those things. Maybe you even lived by them. Until this person appeared. A person who didn't just warm your heart. They opened a door inside it. And the moment that door opened, your shadow, the parts you stuffed into the basement of your psyche, started walking up the stairs. Suddenly you weren't cool, you weren't chill, you weren't unbothered, you were jealous, you were anxious, you were overthinking every silence, every message, every shift of energy. You were afraid, terrified actually, of losing something you never even had. And it scared you because you thought those parts of you were gone. You thought you had grown, you thought you were past this. But Jung warned us long ago. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. In other words, you don't grow by pretending you're healed. You grow by meeting the parts of you that still need healing, and nothing awakens those parts faster than a soul connection. These encounters are trigger factories. Not because the person is hurting you, but because their presence is powerful enough to pull your unconscious material to the surface. And suddenly you're asking, why do I feel so insecure? Why do I need their validation? Why do I panic when they pull away? Why do I feel abandoned even when they haven't left? Why am I so emotionally activated by someone I barely know? Let me tell you why. Because your shadow has been waiting for years for someone, anyone who could wake it up. It didn't rise because you're broken. It rose because you're ready to see what you've been avoiding, ready to heal what you've been carrying, ready to confront what you've been bypassing with positivity, self-control, or numbness. This pain, it is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are finally feeling. You're not regressing, you're revealing. And yes, that revelation hurt. Sometimes more than heartbreak, because heartbreak hurts over another person. Shadow awakening hurts over yourself, your patterns, your wounds, your fears, your stories, your past. A soul connection doesn't save you, it exposes you. It holds up a mirror so clean, so honest, so unforgiving that you can no longer pretend you're fine. You see the little girl inside you who was abandoned. You see the teenager who learned to hide her feelings to be loved. You see the adult who pretended independence because attachment felt like danger. You see yourself, like the real you, the one you've kept hidden under all your strength and logic. And when you finally see her, your heart breaks. Not because of them, but because of you. Because you realize how long you've been carrying pain in silence. This is why it hurts so deeply. You are not mourning them. You are mourning the parts of you that never got to speak. A soul connection is not here to destroy you. It's here to open you, to stretch you, to bring the unconscious to consciousness, to show you the room in your psyche that still needs warmth, attention, compassion, and truth. But here is the beautiful shift. Your triggers are not punishments. They are compasses. Every moment of jealousy points to an unmet need for reassurance. Every spike of anxiety points to an old wound around safety. Every fear of abandonment points to a story that started long before this person. Every overthinking spiral points to a part of you longing for clarity and honesty. Every feeling of unworthiness points to the forgotten child inside you still asking, "Am I enough?" You're not supposed to run from these feelings. You're supposed to follow them. Because your shadow doesn't rise to shame you, it rises to free you. Jung believed that the meeting of two souls is always a confrontation with the self. That true intimacy, even brief intimacy, reveals not the other person, but the hidden corners of your own psyche. So if this connection shook you, if it broke you open, if it awakened jealousy, fear, or longing so intense it scared you, don't ask, "Why am I like this?" Ask, what wound is resurfacing? What child in me is calling for help? Because the person is not the destination. The healing is. The connection may or may not last, but the awakening, that stays. That becomes yours. In the end, the pain is not a sign that something went wrong. It is a sign that something finally went deep. And anything that goes deep has the power to transform you forever. The heartbreak you're trying to forget might be the very doorway your soul has been asking for. That's the part no one ever tells you. That the pain you're trying so hard to bury may be the beginning, not the end. That what feels like emotional collapse might actually be a spiritual initiation. We grow up believing pain is a sign something went wrong. That heartbreak means the universe made a mistake, that if you're crying, shaking, spiraling, it must be because the connection wasn't real. But my friend, the truth is far more complex, far more mystical, and strangely, far more compassionate. Pain isn't proof of misalignment, it's proof of depth, proof that something or someone touched you in a place you've avoided for years. Proof that your heart has finally reached a threshold where numbness can no longer protect you. Because real connections don't keep you comfortable. They wake you up. They pull you out of autopilot. They force you to confront the patterns, wounds, and shadows you've carried quietly through decades. They don't arrive to maintain who you are. They arrive to transform you. And if you look closely, the pattern is always the same. The euphoria. This is it. It begins like a sunrise, soft, warm, breathtaking, the kind of connection that feels fated, perfectly timed, as if every event in your life led you here. You feel seen, you feel safe, you feel awakened. Your nervous system becomes calm around them, or alive around them, or confused in a way that feels strangely right. You tell yourself, finally, someone who feels like home. Your soul whispers, pay attention. And then quietly, subtly, inevitably, something shifts, a moment of distance, a miscommunication, a silence that lasts longer than usual, a look, a tone, a hesitation you can't quite decode. And suddenly, parts of you thought were healed begin to stir. Jealousy, neediness, fear, abandonment, panic, insecurities you were certain you had outgrown. You don't feel like the grounded, evolved version of yourself. You feel like a younger Jung, the one who wasn't chosen, the one who wasn't enough, the one who was left behind. This is the moment people misunderstand the most. They believe something must be wrong with me. Maybe this connection is toxic. Maybe the universe misled me. But Jung would say, no, this is the moment your shadow has awakened, not to punish you, but to reveal you. At some point, the fear becomes too loud. Something collapses. A fight, a misunderstanding, a slow drifting apart. Or maybe nothing dramatic happened. The connection simply couldn't sustain the weight of your unhealed parts. And you break. Quietly or loudly, but you break. You spiral. You overthink. You analyze every message, every moment, every silence. Your heart aches in a way you can't explain, not because you lost them, but because something inside you cracked open. This is the point where many people think the story is over, but this is where the real story begins. You start journaling, you start reading, you start searching, not for them, but for yourself. You discover Jung, you learn about the shadow. You realize your pain wasn't created by the persons, it was exposed by them. You go deeper. Patterns appear. Memories resurface. You notice the wounds you've carried since childhood, since your first heartbreak, since the first time you learned love could disappear. Your soul begins to whisper something new. This wasn't punishment. This was initiation. You see, the point of a soul connection is not always partnership. Sometimes its purpose is revelation. Sometimes it comes to show you where your heart is still closed, where your worth is still fragile, where your identity is still built on survival instead of truth. It forces you to grow in ways comfort never could. Pain becomes a spiritual teacher. The heartbreak becomes a mirror. The loneliness becomes a doorway into the parts of you you've never truly met. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, you begin to align. Not with who you were trying to be, but with who you're meant to become. You don't get what you want, you get what you're aligned to. When you're unhealed, you're aligned with fear. And you meet people who amplify that fear. When you begin healing, you're aligned with truth. And you attract people who awaken that truth. Sometimes the universe gives you the relationship you want as a way to expose the wounds you need to heal before receiving the relationship you're ready for. That's why it hurts. That's why it feels cosmic. That's why you can't forget them. Not because they were your final destination, but because they were the map. They weren't the chapter you stay in. They were the chapter that teaches you how to finally read your own soul. So no, your love story didn't fail. It completed its purpose. It initiated you. It awakened you. It cracked the old version of you open so a truer, more aligned self could emerge. What if the most important person you ever meet is never meant to stay? It's a haunting question. Not because it is sad, but because it is true. We grow up believing that the people who shake our souls must be the ones who stay. The ones who feel fated, the ones who awaken something ancient inside us, the ones who enter with perfect timing, must be our forever. But in the language of the psyche, in the teachings of Jung, in the quiet laws of the inner world, forever is not the point. Transformation is. Every encounter you experience, especially the ones that hit like lightning, is not random, accidental, or meaningless. It is a contract of the soul, written long before your mind could understand it. Some people walk into your life to stay for decades. Some arrive for a chapter, some for a page, some for a single sentence that rewrites the entire book. And the length of their presence has nothing to do with their importance. You've felt this before, that strange recognition, that immediate comfort or tension, that sense of, I've known you before. This is not delusion. This is not fantasy. This is what Jung described as the collision of two inner worlds. He once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." He didn't say one becomes transformed, he said both, because that is the essence of a soul contract, mutual evolution. Your soul recognizes in another the very lesson it came to learn, and so does theirs. Not every soul arrives with the same purpose. Not every connection is designed to hold your hand for life. But each one shapes you, deeply, irrevocably, sometimes painfully. Here are the quiet categories your inner world understands even if your mind doesn't. 1. The ones who teach you to say no. These are the souls who awaken your boundaries. They are not villains. They simply push you toward the place inside you that has been too quiet for too long. They force you to meet your own silence, your own patterns of pleasing, your own fear of disappointing others. And when you finally say no, you reclaim yourself. 2. The ones who teach you to love yourself. Sometimes it takes another person to reveal how deeply you have abandoned yourself. Their presence shows you the gap between how you treat others and how you treat your own soul. They make you see the love you've withheld from yourself. And though it hurts, it is a holy pain, the pain that wakes you up. 3. The ones who teach you not to chase. These are the connections that feel intoxicating, pulling you into the oldest wound. Fear of not being chosen. You chase, you overextend, you shrink, you wait for breadcrumbs. But eventually, after the exhaustion, after the disappointment, you learn the lesson. I am not meant to beg for love. And that realization becomes freedom. 4. The ones who teach you to be real. These souls don't let you hide. Around them, your masks fall off, your defenses break, your truth spills out. You may feel exposed, raw, terrified, but also deeply alive. They don't come to stay, they come to show you the version of you that's been sleeping. Here is the paradox. The souls that transform us the most are not always meant to stay in our lives, because their role was never to build a future with you. It was to build a you who is capable of your future. Some people are not life partners, they are life shapers. Their presence activates your shadow, your yearning, your unresolved wounds. Not to torture you, but to prepare you. If they stayed forever, you would stay dependent on their presence to feel whole. But when they leave, you are forced to grow into the wholeness you projected onto them. This is not cruelty. This is curriculum, the curriculum of the soul. We tend to think that when a connection ends, it failed. But what if the ending is the clearest sign that the contract was completed? What if the universe is not taking something from you, but handing you back a piece of yourself? Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is graduating. It is the moment your soul whispers, "You learned what you came here to learn." You are not losing them. You are integrating them. You can love them without needing them to stay. This is emotional adulthood. This is spiritual maturity. This is the point of every soul contract. After they leave, you may feel empty, but look closely, that emptiness is space. Space for breath, space for integration, space for a new alignment. Because the truth is simple. They did not come to complete your life. They came to complete a chapter of your becoming. And though they may not stay in your story, their fingerprints remain on your evolution. Not forever in presence, but forever in impact. Not forever in body, but forever in meaning. Not forever with you, but forever within you. The universe does not answer your wishes. It answers your frequency. It's one of the hardest truths to accept because wanting feels powerful. Wanting feels intentional. Wanting feels like effort. But in the deeper laws of the psyche, in the quiet mechanics of the inner world, wanting means very little if your energy is in a completely different direction. You don't get what you want, you get what you're aligned to. Most people chase love with trembling hands, with fear beneath their ribs, with loneliness echoing in their chest. and then wonder why they keep attracting inconsistency, chaos, and almost connections that hurt more than they heal. But longing from a place of desperation doesn't attract the person who will love you. It attracts the person who will reveal your wounds, because desperation is a frequency, and frequencies magnetize mirrors. If deep inside you, you are terrified of being alone, you will attract someone who makes you feel alone. If you secretly doubt your worth, you will attract someone who also doubts it. If you are craving validation, you will attract someone who withholds it. This is not punishment. This is reflection. The universe is not cruel, as it is precise. It does not give you the person you dream of when you are still living from your wounds. It gives you the person who activates the wounds you must finally face, because that is the only way your alignment can shift. When you become grounded, when you tend to your inner world, when you stop reaching for someone to numb the ache, something extraordinary happens. You stop attracting chaos. You stop attracting inconsistency. You stop attracting tests. You start attracting mirrors, mirrors of the peace you've cultivated, mirrors of the boundaries you've built, mirrors of the worth you've reclaimed, mirrors of the love you finally give yourself. Suddenly, people who once fascinated you no longer hold power. Dynamics that once kept you hooked no longer feel like home, because your old wounds are no longer choosing for you. This is alignment. Jung taught that the psyche demands wholeness. Alignment is not about pretending to be confident or faking high standards or manifesting from a vision board. Alignment means living in integrity with your values, not abandoning yourself for crumbs. Taking responsibility for your shadow, not blaming partners for triggers that belong to your past. Stopping the self-deception, not calling obsession love, or anxiety chemistry, or trauma reenactment destiny. Alignment is when your conscious desires and your unconscious fears are finally speaking the same language. And when that happens, your relationships change instantly, because you are no longer attracted to what hurts you, and you are no longer intimidated by what's good for you. Some people will only appear in your life after you've crossed a certain inner threshold, when you no longer use love as anesthesia, when you no longer treat relationships as escape routes from yourself, when you no longer chase the feeling of being chosen because you have finally chosen yourself. The people who match your healed energy do not show up when you are drowning in insecurity. They show up when you begin to breathe your own air, when you belong to yourself in a way you never have before, when solitude feels peaceful instead of punishing, when boundaries feel natural instead of terrifying, when your heart is open but no longer leaking. That is the moment the universe responds, not to your longing, but to your alignment. Because wanting love is human, but being ready for love is spiritual. Not every encounter is random. Not every heartbreak is a mistake. Some people enter your life not to complete your story, but to return you to yourself. Some arrive to awaken the parts of you you've buried for years. The fears you silenced, the desires you ignored, the wounds you pretended were gone. Some walk in with tenderness, others with chaos, but all of them, every single one, serve a purpose in your becoming. They pull up your shadow not to punish you, but to finally let you see what has been shaping you from within. They push you toward the journey Jung called individuation, the slow, sacred movement of becoming your whole self. And now, a question for you, a real one. Who came to your mind while you were watching this? Was it a soulmate or a mirror? What did they awaken in you? Longing, fear, clarity, courage? If you feel safe, I invite you to share your story below, because this channel is not just about messages, it's about our shared human experience, the silent threads that connect all of us, the invisible moments that shape us far more than we admit. If this video touched something in you, if it gave you language for a feeling you've held alone, you're welcome to stay, like, subscribe, and walk this journey with me. Until next time, may you return to yourself again and again with grace.